get ourselves organized for the next couple of days, and then to kind of talk about our objectives and some of our deliverables. And so looking at the composite of this room right now, we'll probably deep dive on a couple of these topics. But again, to remind ourselves, the objectives we want to develop strategies to increase Airman and Guardian utilization of GAIN. We'll talk about, what they should be accomplishing and how to do that in a second. Develop a plan to improve communication about the innovation ecosystem tools. So GAIN is really meant to be a program, and there's technology capabilities embedded within that. And two of those technologies, SAFMG has direct responsibility for, which is CrowdVector, the software that runs the GAIN website that Crystal had up, and then Productable, which is a innovation, like a portfolio management, decision-making, leadership communication tool around investments in innovation projects. And then there's a third technology, Vision, which is being promoted and utilized a lot by the Spark Tanks, which is really an open, like an idea inbox, open innovation environment. And then the third is to identify the value-driven use cases and figure out how to communicate that to stakeholders. So it's like as if we had SharePoint and nobody knew what it was and how to use it. If people don't understand that they have a capability, it's available to them, and how to leverage it, then it's not going to get utilized, right? So we're going to have this capability, it's value-driving capability that nobody's using. So for specifically for maybe the two of you, because I think that there's more knowledge in the room about what GAIN is. GAIN is an innovation knowledge management system, so I often do compare it to SharePoint. I think of SharePoint as a low-code, no-code content management environment, where people with no knowledge about how to create databases or manage lists or do stuff can go in and learn how to utilize that environment. And then if you're really an expert, you can actually start to kind of code around that environment and add other plugins or applications to make it kind of more powerful than it just comes out of the box. CrowdVector is a purpose-built knowledge management environment specifically for innovation. So it enables us to create topics where people can come in and submit ideas or other content into a challenge, and then we have a workflow engine and some other capabilities behind the scenes that are all designed to support an innovation ecosystem. That's what we want to focus on. And so within our deliverables, again, looking at the room that we have here, there's a few things that we really wanted to try to move, make some progress on. We have the AFMA team here with Jeff and Vanessa. They just left.
She went to go get Nadia.
So we're currently working on the open call is a place where Airman and Guardian can come in and submit kind of unprompted ideas, right? So there's not a leader specifically calling for action, but there's somebody who's saying, here's something that is either a problem with the work I do, or here's an opportunity that the Air Force can take advantage of, and I have an idea on how we can solve that problem. And so they submit to open call, and then there's a process that initiates after that. We're trying to build that process out and make it more robust and more meaningful. So we're leveraging the 8-step PPSM as a model, one of the guiding models on if I'm going to put something in here, what's the support mechanism look like, right? How do I get through the process of validating my solution and getting support and making this thing a reality? So we're working on that. And then another key project that we're working on is thinking about the master process library as a system, right? And is it possible that GAIN might provide capabilities to make the MPL more valuable? So I think there's a number of things. One is, can we create a marketplace? So maybe not for every process project. There are certain process projects that have the opportunity to scale and maybe scale across parts of the organization or across the entire organization. So how do we catalog those projects and then make them available to other people who could adopt them as a strategy for solving some important problem in the Air Force? There's also the upfront work. So can we create a database of needs for projects? Can we create an environment where projects that are running might leverage the capability as part of their research to support a project? Do we have a place where we can just see all the projects happening so that maybe we can find synergies between projects? So Gain has capabilities built into it. The software has capabilities that might be that we might be able to leverage to make those things happen. And so, you know, again, kind of identifying those different use cases and making sure that we kind of understand how we're working on them and when we're working on them is something I'd like to make some progress on this week. And then we have some other things in deliverables, but I think given the audience that we have here today, I feel like those are the two things that we might focus on today, if that makes sense. Do you guys have questions? Probably have a ton of questions, but.
Probably not quite yet.
Okay, all right.
So we're gonna focus on what two deliverables today?
I think MPL and OpenCall.
PML? What's MPL?
Yeah,
PML.
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 yeah,
Yeah.
PML.
it's all right.
PML.
Yeah, same thing.
PML. I don't know.
PML,
However, I
PML,
wrote
that's
Oh, I just thought there was a new acronym I wasn't tracking.
PML. The PML. No. So last week, Crystal and I were out in Dayton. I was only out there for a day.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Does everybody know what vision is? Do you guys know what vision is? Okay. So we continue to get these comparisons between Gain as the program and the platform and Vision, which is a technology a tool where people can go in and do similar activities to OpenCall, which is I have an idea. Nobody's asked me for this idea, but I have an idea, and I'm going to go and put it in a tool, and then something magical is supposed to happen, right? And we're responsible for the magic that happens with OpenCall, and part of our project this week is to kind of drive some more fidelity into what is that magic that's actually happening. What should that idea submitter expect as their experience or journey? And then and so what happens is we're getting a lot of people who go, oh, Gain and Vision are the exact same thing, and only that. Gain is only a place where I go and submit my ideas. Well, except for SparkTank, and they'll caveat that. Except for SparkTank, an airman goes in, they submit an idea, and magic happens, and then they go, well, we like Vision better than Gain for whatever reason, which I still don't understand what those reasons are because nobody has sat me down and explained the exact reasons, but that's fine. So the first thing is that we want to decouple that idea that Gain is OpenCall, and then that Gain and OpenCall are Vision. Like these things are not actually true statements. They're not equals in statements. So part of what we're going to work on too is just trying to build out our knowledge about what Gain is, what CrowdVector is, and where those two concepts actually do overlap, but where they don't overlap. And so the process library is one where that's a use case that we're building out that clearly could not be done in Vision. It doesn't belong in Vision, that kind of thing. OpenCall, again, we're trying to think about our magical experience that happens with that would be different than what Vision currently offers. And then if Vision and OpenCall do overlap, then we just give our innovation community choices, right? They have an option to use one experience or another, and we can figure that out. And then I haven't completely thought about your guys' role as SharePoint experts and your knowledge with working with SAFMG, but again, I think we're trying to understand when and where we could be using Gain as capability, and when and where we should be using other tools.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
So we got Gain, Vision. They both capture ideas. Does that data shared across the platforms?
No, not today.
Is it kept on each platform so that?
Yes.
Well, one of the concerns out there, because I've seen this happen a couple of times in my life, where, when eventually we'll pick one or the other, and down the road we'll pick another, and then down the road we'll pick another, and so on and so forth. And one of the issues is, where does this data get stored, and how big of a pain is it going to be to move it from platform to platform over time and keep it relevant to what's going on. And I'm wondering if that may be one of the things that SharePoint can help with, if the data is going into a SharePoint list of some type, or somewhere where we can put the data, and be able to access it through other reporting systems and whatnot over time. The short time, it's not an issue, but long term, I would hate to see the Air Force continue to store things out in some other place that we don't have access to once the contract's over, and then we have to try to fight to, get that where it needs to be and all that kind of hassle again. So are we looking at how we're gonna do that in the future at all?
I know that there is a desire to have an API, and I know that's, while APIs, from what I've learned, are very easy to do, they're very resource heavy to do, and so we have to build that for Mr. Lombardi, because I had the conversation with him last year, and he's like, there's no way you're gonna build a unicorn out of getting contractors to play nice with each other. I said, but actually we can. We actually have the desire. We all understand that.
APIs aren't that hard if the software is built the way it needs to be built.
Right.
I mean, they're really not that difficult.
So we need to build out that path of what that would look like, because we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, right? That just isn't
I'm just worried
smart.
about the data, crystal behind all this.
Yes.
Where's the data gonna,
Yes.
whose data is it?
Yeah.
Where's it gonna be stored?
And I don't know that
The
answer.
long-term care and
Yeah.
feeding of that data is what I'm concerned with.
I agree.
Because leaving it in a platform that eventually, over time, is gonna evolve,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Joe, in that sense, is SharePoint a use case that we're talking about? Using that to manage the data in the background?
Not at this point, I don't think, but I'm just kind of throwing that,
Yeah.
lobbed in.
Or is that
Yeah.
something Vision can do?
No,
So-
I wouldn't do that with Vision because they're contractors as well. But Nadia's got a point to make, so
Oh.
I saw you raising your hand.
Yeah,
so.
no, I was just talking about like API development. One of the folks who was briefing out at Dayton last week, they had like Google built out an
Yeah.
API and also do the structuring on the actual software themselves to like all these different systems.
Right.
That's
Okay. No, don't apologize.
Contributing to the
It's
storage
all
system,
topics,
but-
and so we've got to process map our spaghetti diagram of how we're going to make this happen, so we can pitch a COA 2, COA 3 to Mr. Gaucher, to he can look at the contract modules and go, okay, how do we make this happen? How do we make this jive in the future? Because the ultimate goal for SAFMG as chief management, W Chief Management Officer, W Chief Risk Management Officer, is one of the messages we heard at AFMC last week is the airmen need to be empowered. We want to be empowered to do our job. And the epiphany to me was last week is we've empowered the airmen and guardians to go innovate and go do their thing. But what they're not empowering the senior leaders is they're not arming us with their homework, so that way we can go carry forward and have the bigger conversations that need to be had to help with process architecture across the department, across the functional communities, and help de-risk and unleash all the gridlocked funding from processes that are just antiquated. And so when we are looking at GAIN as an innovation and improvement portal, the network at large, the things that it's supposed to be able to bring, and that's where all these capabilities, where is that information stored, but how do we get that information to our senior leaders' hands to help them tell that story, so we empower them to go have the conversations that they can't have right now because they don't have the data. They don't have the so what, they don't have the heat sensors. And so we've got to keep that end state in mind of where we're trying to help SAFMG help drive the Department of the Air Force and the conversations that need to be had that they can't have right now. Because just everything's just everywhere. So we've got to figure that out.
Yeah, so, but I think what you know, because he was talking use cases basically of our users using the data to improve processes, to share knowledge. I think what you're talking about is a little different use case. It's that management system that surrounds it all.
Right. And so there's two use, because Mr. Lombardi said, this is what we need, right? And so Mr. Gaucher dropped money on the contract and said, build the platform, build the steam engine, right? So we've got a lot of great individual siloed efforts. We've got a lot of great campaigns going on, but right now we're not able to synthesize the data and pull it together because the data is everywhere in different systems, and to show the aggregate, level of stupid that's going on across, you know, Afrix has got all their refinery projects going on. We've got Vision's got their projects, and they're just little one-off innovations. Airmen are going out to innovate, and we don't want to stifle that, right? But at the DCMO level, at SAF-MG level, it is our responsibility to aggregate the systems to build that story so he can go to A1 and go, here's the stupid, and how are you helping us get healthier, right? Here's how many times this process has been process improved. Here's the voice of the customer. Here's the projects in the process model library. And then it goes into Joe's line of effort for training. He can take that to the black belt and go start using the MPOs into the functional communities to help the organizations get healthier. So that ultimately, innovation at the grassroots level is a goal. It's one way to tackle the project, the issue for the department. But at the senior leader, at the executive C-suite level, we are light years. We are so far from actually building the engine to help empower them to have those conversations. So I want to keep that as our long-term, what we need to build, what we are responsible for protecting our department's leaders, because right now what's also eating their time is the congressional testimonies, right? So General Brown, General Schlossman, I know a lot of y'all heard this yesterday, but General Brown, General Schlossman, Chief Bass, Chief Tauberman, they're going and testifying in Congress, right? And they're getting asked the same question by different groups at different times throughout the congressional testimonies. And I'm not saying that they aren't, but if they were to come up with different responses saying that they're using different ways to tackle the same problem, our taxpayers are going to catch on to it. And Congress and legislation are going to start stripping our funding because we've been irresponsible at this thing called innovation and improvement. And so we have to help, like I take the HASC-D, the MGM sends out now that they've been sharing the HASC-D, the testimony preps and all that type of stuff. And I'll go to, the other thing we have is Productable. And I'll go into those projects and I'll look at the responses that they're prepping our senior leaders for these congressional testimonies. I go, well, that sounds like this project in Holodeck. They're just calling it something different, which tells me there's multiple of the same efforts going on. And that's a big red flag to me. So we've got to protect them. I'll pause there.
So that data question, Joe, I think is probably out of scope for this week. But we're aware of the need, and there's things we're working on that might.
So that's what I
address
want
the
to.
problem.
That's what I want to try to get to is these deliverables. We keep talking in a big circle, but specifically, a deliverable is to develop the PML platform from what perspective? From the user perspective, because we don't have any users in here, or from the management perspective, because I think we have Jim and you know we have some of the folks that can manage that. We can develop it from that perspective. But I don't know that we have the right people in the room to develop it from a field user kind of environment.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get enough work done this week to be like deeply intensive interacting with users for this meeting. What I want us to be able to accomplish is being able to map out the specific solution that we want to build. And I think for Process Library specifically, I think to me there's really 5 solutions, 5 use cases for that GAIN could support and handle. It's going to be a collection of user experiences and data capture and interactions on our site. And what we want to do is figure out if they're in or out of scope for GAIN. And if they're in scope for GAIN, then I want to figure out, well, what is that effort? How do we quickly get those MVPs spun up on the platform? How do we quickly engage the users that you're talking about so that we can actually get this solution up and running? Because I think there's tremendous amount of opportunity that we're just not extracting out of that community and that we're not making available on the platform. Does that make sense? I mean, I think that's more than a 2-day effort. If we did nothing but focused on Process Library and had users here, we wouldn't have enough time to even get that.
No, I'm trying to narrow the scope because
Yep.
we're here for really 2 days, and any one of these efforts can eat up more than just those 2 days. That's kind of my point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I want us to get into agreement about for Process Library, what exactly are we gonna try to implement on GAIN? and then to your point, who's the audience and what's the use case? What's the interaction that we expect to have on the platform? And do we agree that it's in or out of scope for Gain, or does it belong on SharePoint, or does it belong somewhere else, or does it not belong anywhere? Okay, but that's what that's for Process Library. That's what I want to make some progress in, and to be able to say that Gain, which people think is right now just an open idea system, that if we decide the Process Library exists on there, that's a use case supported by this program, by this platform. Okay, like a lot of people don't get that Gain is this highly capable, very flexible, highly configurable innovation management system, and that we can put things like Process Library and other capabilities on the platform. And so that's what I want to accomplish, just specifically around Process Library.
And that's a good goal. I think we can get there.
Yeah.
And we've already been having conversations, about this probably the last few months.
Yep.
So I think you mentioned 5 use cases. That's probably how many we described.
Yep.
So
and-
Jim, how many, the vision for the PML, could you in like 2 minutes
Yeah,
describe that?
and I think that's what I was gonna get to, Joe. I think that deserves a conversation. I mean, you used the word marketplace, and I think that's a very good word to use. But I saw marketplace as a little different than you guys saw it maybe. But I think the way you guys describe marketplace is probably a good thing for now, but ultimately in the future, I would like to, for example, if we put it in the use case of our MPOs first, right? We've got MPOs out there, and I was talking to another MPO, looking at another A3 for OSI, and you got a young black belt, young guy, civilian trying to get his black belt, really a novice at using these tools. And then we've got, Troutman, who's pretty good at it, and we got the 412th guy looking at it, and Dave and I have been working with them on, what should this look like? What should, your NPO experience be? So when you look at that, and we're working with those two, and then this OSI guy comes along who's a novice at an NPO, that really gives us a value stream of what we need to do. We need to be able to help those NPOs that they can come in there, look at a process, and then another thing we need to integrate is commander's perspective, right? If the unit commanders are transforming the unit, what are they transforming it from? What are they transforming it to? If our 2 letters are having an issue transforming some of the business mission areas from or to, that needs to be in there. So to me, it's all about that NPO as a center point, right? It's everything that evolves around them, understanding that, okay, my leaders want to go here, my big 2 letters, my functionals want to go there, my BMA people want to go there, my unit commander wants to go here, because unit commander and the headquarters ain't necessarily on the same page, right? Different timeline, if you will. Unit commander is much more urgent and of today, where the headquarters are thinking of the future. So how do you bring those both in? So to me, it's all about making those MPO connections and the PM connections and the wing PM connections that are out there, and building that. Should I say it? Ecosystem.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
But to me, I call it connections, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about making those connections. That if an NPO, and this is where I think Jeff and I think Vanessa, the AFMA, AFMA has a manpower standards list. Why isn't that in the process model library? Because if manpower guys in the field, the guys and gals in the field are NPOs and they're PMs and they're wing PMs, why aren't they connected to this system? Why isn't that one of their day-to-day jobs, is to connect units to that system and those processes that are working good? Because if they're working good, then you have the marketplace, right? So we know which process has the right inputs, the right outputs, is producing well, is improving the units. And that's shareable amongst the field. So to me, that's that's probably more than one use case, but to me, that center use case needs to be the MPOs. Because another thing I've come to realize, now you all heard it from me, I don't think we understand processes in the Air Force in the first place. Most of our processes are not mapped. Everything that's mapped is not a process, for the most part, right? I did the permeability. One of their basic process is called eligibility determination. That is not mapped at all, but when you do the value stream, you see that is the primary process. But it's not mapped, it's not managed. So, how do we then figure out what those processes are? What are they really? What's the hidden plant running around the Air Force? And what are those stupid things? That's the kind of marketplace we need to build. I know I can drone on for days on this,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to give that overall vision, Joe.
You're over your 2 minutes.
Yeah,
So, in
Oh,
on
I can run a timer?
SharePoint, on SharePoint, we have, so this is the PML on SharePoint, right? No?
No,
I
that's a
couldn't
totally different.
I couldn't find the link, it wasn't on
You don't have it, yeah, it's under, go to innovation and improvement.
yeah, it's,
Up at the
go to the
top,
main,
top.
go to the home,
over there?
No, top navigation,
there you go,
top navigation.
top left.
Okay.
You
I'm
see all
sorry.
the words along the top?
Under the blue
No.
bar, right under that blue
Right here.
bar.
Oh,
No,
there we go,
innovation
got
and
it.
improvement.
I didn't even
Then
know
go to
that was there.
business process management.
Okay. Oh, it's, yeah, cause
It's a
in
totally
our-
different site,
It
wasn't built
is, yeah,
on
that's
here,
right.
so.
This is what I was looking for. I couldn't find it on my other one. Okay. Thank you. So we have, so on SharePoint, we already have all these artifacts here, and, I'm also cautious about, like, transferring all that data to Gain is the right place for, with the priorities that we have coming up with Spark Tank to focus that and exploding all of the campaigns and the other tools and features on Gain is continuing to use, how do we make, if this is still the right place to host the artifacts, but how do we get Gain, near-term solution, for the next year, year plus, whatever, to connect for that communities of practice feature where people are going in there and saying, this is stupid, right? And then it hyperlinks and goes, go here. Yes, we have that, go here, and here's the leading process when the functionals actually go through and, okay, we've iterated on this process 5 to 10 times. All of them are true, they all just have variances, so how do we mesh those together to create the newest true, the leading process, with all the delta variances there? I still think that this is the right place to keep it currently, until we find that transition plan, because y'all can't do everything in the next 3 months, and with everything that's on your plate.
Well, I think we're maybe leaping ahead.
Okay.
I think right now, for this session,
Mhm.
I want to be able to focus in on, we have this
Right.
process library
Mhm.
concept, we have people who are master process officers, what tools and capabilities are we giving them, and what end state are we going to achieve? So again, we have this idea of a marketplace. Well, what is the marketplace? Let's define what that is. How should somebody be able to use it? What value are we creating with the marketplace? And then we can decide, well, what technology is supporting that? Which could be one or more tools.
Can you demo what that looks like on because I don't have backshop access, can y'all demo what that currently looks like? And so y'all can see where we're getting at for Jim's vision on that?
Yeah, I think we can,
Yeah,
let's quickly map out these, like I said, at least 5 use cases, make sure that we understand what we're talking about, and then we can get on the platform and we can talk about, well, what could that potentially look like in game? What might that user experience be? And again, what will somebody, who's the user and what are they gonna accomplish when they get onto Gain and interact with this process library marketplace on Gain?
Regardless of solutions.
Yeah.
Just map it out.
Yeah,
okay.
and again, making some decision at this moment about whether we're using SharePoint or Gain
Yeah.
is not where we're at in the process, and it could be that we're using both,
Yeah.
or it could mean that we're using one or the other.
Right.
We just need to understand what the marketplace is and what value it should be driving,
Okay,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Because again, in my mind, having spent some time thinking about this, there are things that are going to be process projects that I don't believe will end up in the marketplace, because they might be so specific to where they occur. And now we might go, well, we still want to capture that or know where the documentation is or whatever, and again, we can decide whether that belongs in the marketplace or somewhere
So,
else.
do we wanna start getting into
Yeah.
discussion of what might these 5, cause I've got a few, what I
So-
think they are.
So let's before we do that.
Okay.
So in parallel, and I don't know if we all just work on process library or if we want to break out in groups. But again, I also want to drive some fidelity into OpenCall and the PPSM, and because we got Jeff and Vanessa and Dave and Thomas, and so we have team members here who've been working on this. But I want to get to the point where I know that we've done a lot of work, and I want to see I want to figure out, well, where are we at on that journey and what's left to do, so that we can, because we're getting close, I think, you know, to a point where we can say this is now a functioning use case within our platform, right? But I want to know that we're there,
For
you know, or
open
how close.
call
Yes,
or
for open call.
Okay,
Because again, in this conversation, open call gain does not equal open call, and open call does not equal vision, but we can't articulate that yet today.
and we have, other places like, you know, AFMC, this is a government, so this is a GOT solution, they have an idea in just as well, right? And they have all of this, they already have all the organizations linked, so I've gotta find a way, yeah, they've done a whole new feature Outlook, but they've done what we were hoping to have had on Gain, we just haven't been able to get there with this level of platform one. But so we have multiple idea ingest locations, right? And so does AFMA's role evolve to managing what we were talking about yesterday, to managing the ingest ecosystem of all of these and going, okay, and how do we grow those lanes of the road of how you're collecting data and metrics from all of these platforms to help build the heat map and Gain, and the ultimate is just tacking on what's in Vision and what's in AFRL, these ideas for the what am I trying to think of, the tracking of the ideas, right? Because we have to be able to build that pivot chart, and that's where something like Power BI comes handy for. But I don't know if Gain has that or CrowdVector has that capability. I know that there's a lot of things that it can do. I don't know what we bought, and I don't know how much it's gonna be and what those use cases are. So again, outside of scope, but these are all things that we need to keep in our mind as we're going through these conversations to say, okay, parking lot idea or comment, things that we need to go investigate down the road. Cause it's just all over the place. And I also wanna give, if y'all have any demos of the SharePoint and the tools and the features that y'all wanna give, if there's now versus later, we can connect you and you can give us a rundown and educate us on what we can expect, what's coming out with SharePoint version, 25.0, I don't know. So that way we know what capabilities are there, so we can task level load what our priorities are with what we're developing and Gain as well too.